The SADC Troika, consisting of the arms of politics, defense and security, will be holding an urgent meeting next week to discuss the current situation in the region of Cabo Delgado in Mozambique. The meeting comes as military operations continue in Palma. The African Union has called for coordinated international action to jointly address the urgent threat to regional and continental peace and security. President Cyril Ramaphosa says that the members of the South African National Defence Force have already started to secure the repatriation of nationals stranded in the region following a deadly attack by insurgents. Ramaphosa says that the SANDF has been dispatched to secure the safety of South Africans. Right, well, earlier on we spoke to our foreign editor, Sophie Mokoena, on the latest.
The big topic is the urgent meeting of Troika, SADC Troika on politics, defense and security. The Troika is a committee of heads of state and government, the three, that is Botswana, which is the chair, South Africa, which is the incoming chair, Zimbabwe was the chair before Botswana, and that would include, of course, the current chair of SADC itself, Mozambique, but also the incoming chair, that is Malawi. So you expect those countries to attend the meeting, the 5 countries, Botswana, the chair, South Africa, the incoming Zimbabwe, the outgoing, and then the current SADC chair, Mozambique and Malawi. These will be your presidents. That is President Masisi from Botswana, President Ramaphosa from South Africa as the incoming chair, President Mnangagwa, outgoing chair, President Nyusi, the current chair of Mozambique, and of course the current president of Malawi. But also you will have representatives of the AU, Peace and Security Council. You will also perhaps have the representatives of the United Nations, because all these a continental body and the world body, that is the continental body, the AU, and the world body, the UN, would want to have information in terms of what SADC is going to do to try and stabilize that region of Cabo Delgado. You are aware that since last week, I have been asking, even on social media, where is President Masisi going to convene an urgent SADC Troika meeting that deals with defense, security and politics in our region. And now this is happening next week. For me, that's the most important one. And of course, South Africa, what South Africa is doing currently.
It is seen as, this meeting I'm talking about, it's seen as an important platform in terms of regional engagement to resolve the security situation in Mozambique. But what are you hearing on the ground with regards to the various role players? Are they hopeful that something practical and tangible can come out of this meeting?
The challenge, the communication is a challenge. You start with the language itself, majority, and in those areas people speak Portuguese, and therefore it is very difficult to communicate with them. But we know that fighting is continuing in different parts of that region. It's a very volatile region. We know that the Mozambique military did reinforce, and you'll find that perhaps the insurgents did retreat, but they can retreat in neighboring countries, that is South Africa, or perhaps they can go to Tanzania. That is why Tanzania is complaining that much is not being done to address this issue, because where the conflict is and where you have refugees, it's close to the border with Tanzania, and therefore it will destabilize Tanzania. From Tanzania, clearly it will touch East Africa, because Tanzania is part of the East Africa region, Somalia, and all of those. Therefore, if you don't deal with this problem here in the southern region, you cannot rule out instability in regions such as East Africa. Therefore, it is important for them to act quickly. I mean, I was surprised that it took so long for SADC to convene this important meeting, because all the time, since I started reporting on politics and international and regional stories as a political reporter some years ago, the previous leaders of the SADC region were quick to convene meetings, even if it's a small standoff or political standoff. I mean, Lesotho, a case in point, or Zimbabwe, they would call an urgent meeting to try and resolve matters. But this time around, there was such a delay that led to the situation getting out of hand. I think the leaders of SADC failed the people of Mozambique.
All right. Well, for more on this, we are now joined via Zoom by Professor in International Law, Professor Hennie Strydom, to unpack the deployment of SANDF to Mozambique. A very good afternoon to you, Prof. I don't know if you remember me, but you taught me international law. It's really good to see you again.
I do so, and good afternoon.
Now, you earlier on in the week slammed SADC for what you called their inaction. What's your reaction to the SANDF now being deployed or called in to assist? Is it too little, too late? I mean, what's your reaction at this time?
Yeah, as I understand, the sending of South African military to Mozambique is there to rescue South Africans. So I do not get the impression that they've been sent there in order to have some combat responsibility and assisting the Mozambican authorities on this. So we should distinguish this rescue operation from other kinds of involvement by perhaps South Africa or any of the other neighboring countries in dealing with the issue on the ground.
Yeah. Speaking of neighboring countries, you raised concern about, this spillover of violence by the insurgents into neighboring countries. Now that there is this discussion, SADC meeting, of course, over the issue in Mozambique, are you perhaps more confident now of the fact that, a solution might be found? But I say that on the back of the fact that, historically it's always been quite difficult to deal with terrorists or insurgents. So is there less of a concern from your side, or do you still believe that there is an issue of spillover violence possible?
Yes, I have serious concerns about it. I think the meeting was long overdue, and now we still have to await the real action that needs to be taken. The former speaker made a very important point. We are dealing here with insurgents who cross borders at will. And very easily. So they jump from one country to another. And in doing so, they can create serious instability in neighboring countries.
Yeah.
We've seen a similar situation developing in the Sahel with the Mali conflict. It's the same in East Africa. So this should have been nipped in the bud a long time ago. And I'm afraid that at this point in time, we're facing a critical situation. And I'm looking forward to the response that will come from SADC, hopefully very soon.
Yeah, and in terms of the African continent, I mean, I'm really going to ask about international law and what it says when it comes to the issue of dealing with insurgents or terrorists coming from other countries. I mean, this is an absolute catastrophe if we're talking about borders where any terrorists or insurgents can kind of jump into neighboring countries. What does international law then say about how we deal with that situation, with those insurgents? Already we're having to send our own enforcements into their country, but in terms of them coming in, I mean, what does the law say there?
Well, if there's a threat to peace and security to any country or to a region, the countries in that region have the responsibility and the duty to act, and they can sort of put together a plan to deal with it collectively. We've seen that with the G5 Sahel force. In order to protect borders and to patrol borders, that the countries involved and affected by the insurgents, because of the fact that they are so mobile, you need a sort of collective effort in order to prevent them from jumping from one state to another and creating instability. So when the countries act in this regard, they act within international law.
Yeah.
Provided, of course, that it's a proportional reaction to the threat that they are facing.
Yeah. Prof, at the end of the day, you know, when we're talking about terrorists and insurgents, I mean, it's interesting you talk about the fact that they are so mobile, and that's a cost. The fact that they're armed, that's a cost. There's always a question to me when we're talking about terrorists and insurgents of who is funding them, who is giving them this money. These aren't people just sitting in a jungle somewhere. These are people who are well armed. They're able to cause problems in countries. I mean, is that one of the things that perhaps governments are failing in terms of addressing, because these people aren't just making their own money. There is somebody who is sponsoring all of this.
No, you are sort of touching upon a serious issue, and correctly so. I mean, these insurgents have lots of weapons, and I think, you know, in situations like that, weapons are sold on the black market. And I think the international community has failed in getting behind the sources and dealing with that. I may just mention, I just read, as an external examiner, a recent thesis that was submitted on the responsibility and the liability of those sponsoring these insurgents. And that is a sort of area that is totally under-researched at this point in time. I'm very glad that now we have this sort of attention focusing on the providers of the weapons and the arms merchants, because they are part of the problem to a great extent.
Yeah, no doubt that, you know, South Africa has to sort of get involved in this. We saw that there were a number of our countrymen, South Africans, who have been killed in South Africa, in Mozambique, and that remain in the country and do indeed need protection. How influential really is South Africa at this time on the continent when it comes to addressing this issue?
I think South Africa still plays a significant role because of its economic power and political clout, although I think some of that has dwindled over the last couple of years or decade and more. But I think within the SADC region, it has a major role to play in this, also because of the fact that apart from the security threats, South Africa has major economic interests in what is going on in Mozambique. If we think about the gas fields in Palma, where this latest incident has taken place. So I think from that point as well, South Africa should be very aware of what's going on there and take action timelessly in consultation with the Mozambican authorities.
All right. Prof, a great pleasure speaking to you. It's nice to ask you the questions for a change. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, and all the best.
Thank you.
Good seeing you again.
Good seeing you.
Thank
All
you.
right, that's Prof. Hennie Strydom, international law lecturer at the University of Johannesburg. In fact, my former lecturer. All right, well, traditional health practitioners